After the Second World War, Germany was divided into two countries. In the east was the German Democratic Republic, a socialist state with strong ties to the Soviet Union. In the west was the Federal Republic of Germany, a capitalist state established in the American, French, and British zones of occupation after World War II. Until the late 20th century, these two countries were physically and ideologically divided. This changed in 1990 when the two countries reunified and became the Federal Republic of Germany. Although reunifying the countries was an ambitious undertaking, Germans were optimistic that the two sides would come together equally. The former Chancellor of Germany, Willy Brandt, famously said, "What belongs together will grow together." However, the promise of one country with two equal parts has not held true. While physical borders have been torn down, invisible divisions still persist. In terms of wealth, for example, there are huge disparities. Out of the 500 richest Germans, only 21 are from the former East. The most popular sport in Germany, soccer, is similarly dominated by the former West. A testament to this is that Germany's 2014 World Cup winning team only had one player born in the former East. The imbalance also exists in the Bundesliga, the top flight of German soccer, where only 6 out of the 56 teams that have played in the league come from the former East. If we take into account the populations of the two countries, more than twice as many East German teams should have played in the league. This raises the question, why does this disparity exist? In this video, we'll examine the economic and political factors that led to the division of soccer in Germany. The first reason we'll look at is the way that the reunification of the leagues and governing bodies happened. When the two sides reunified, it was not a matter of two equal sides coming together. Rather, it was dominated by the demands of the West. The separate countries had separate governing bodies for soccer. In the East, it was regulated by the Deutscher Fußballverband, and in the West, it was organized by the Deutscher Fußballbund. Instead of combining the two organizations, the East German DFB simply became a regional member of the DFB. As a result, West Germans were able to seize decision-making power of the new combined governing body. This led to an unfair balance in the new combined German League, which was to be made up of teams from the former East German League, which had 14 teams, and the former West German League, which had 18. In its first season, the league would have 20 teams, and then the following year it would size down to only 18 teams. Negotiations began with both sides coming forward with proposals about the balance between teams from the former East and West. After a lot of disagreements, the two sides eventually agreed on a system where all of the teams from the top flight in the West would play in the league, and only 2 teams from East Germany would play in the first division. In addition, 6 East German teams would play in the second division. This agreement immediately created an uneven playing field between the two sides, since only 8 of the 14 teams from the DDR Oberliga, the highest level of soccer in East Germany, would be playing professionally. In contrast, all of the teams from the former top tier of West German soccer would be playing in professional leagues. For the East German teams that were relegated to the lower leagues, this agreement inevitably resulted in a financial collapse, since the income from semi-professional soccer was simply not sustainable for clubs of their size. All of these teams are now either dissolved or are playing in the third tier of the German soccer pyramid or below. For example, BFC Dynamo Berlin, who were the record champions of East Germany, are now playing in the fourth tier of the German soccer pyramid. Similarly, FC Magdeburg, who won 3 East German League titles, are now playing in the third tier. All of this is not to say that the East German teams playing professionally had a golden ticket that would guarantee their survival. In fact, many of them immediately struggled with the challenges of adapting to the new situation, especially the transition from socialism to capitalism. The East German teams had become accustomed to the financial support that the government gave them. In the socialist state, sports were seen as a part of the planned economy and seen as a propaganda tool through which the government could reach the people. As a result, the government invested significant amounts of money into soccer. One of the most important ways they did so was through the construction and maintenance of facilities where elite athletes were trained. Without this mechanism provided by the state, most clubs lacked the infrastructure to develop their own players. In many cases, East German teams not only received player development support, but also cash. For example, BFC Dynamo Berlin was one of the most successful clubs in East Germany, and was the favored club of the East German secret police and many powerful government officials. As a result, they received a lot of financial support from the highest levels of government. Many of the other clubs were associated with other state-controlled industries and benefited financially from these connections. The team Lok Leipzig, for example, was closely associated with the East German State Railway. When Germany reunified, the state provided infrastructure and income streams disappeared for the East German clubs. Because of this, they were immediately scrambling for cash. The West German clubs were aware of this and took full advantage by cheaply buying up the only valuable resources that the East German clubs had, their players. In fact, in the years following reunification, almost 150 players transferred from East German clubs to the West, including East German star players like Andreas Thom and Matthias Sammer. Contributing to this mass exodus was the fact that East German players simply did not want to play in East Germany anymore, because the West promised lucrative contracts, better facilities, and more freedom. As a result, the East German teams were forced to field teams made up of older or inexperienced players, and they were no longer able to compete with the teams in the West. A similar situation plagues clubs in the East today, since all of their young talents are bought by clubs in the West. This is often the result of necessity, since East German clubs are often struggling to stay afloat. It's also often difficult for East German clubs to convince talented players to stay because they simply can't offer the same opportunities and salaries that West German clubs can. For example, Toni Kroos and his younger brother Felix Kroos were brought up in the Hansa Rostock Academy, where they were considered top talents. Early on in their careers, however, they transferred to FC Bayern and Werder Bremen. Toni, the more successful of the two brothers, brought in 2.3 million euros at the time. However, his value has since skyrocketed. With more financial resources, East German clubs would be able to get a lot more value out of these young talents. One final factor that has historically hindered East German teams from finding success is mismanagement. The management of the teams in the East was simply overwhelmed by many of the new tasks like negotiating sponsorships, dealing with television money, and handling player contracts. The solution to all of this for the East German clubs was to invite Westerners into their leadership who promised to help manage the club's affairs. However, their promises were often vacuous, and in many cases, they drove the clubs into the ground. The most well-known example of this is Dynamo Dresden, where a businessman called Rolf-Jürgen Otto became president of the club. The belief was that he would know how to transition the club successfully to the capitalist system, so they gave him almost unlimited trust. However, it quickly became clear that he only had his own interests in mind. In a few years, Otto's mismanagement caused a complete collapse. Dynamo was relegated from the first tier all the way down to the fourth tier in a matter of a few years, and also was left with a debt of over 10 million German marks. This example is just one of many East German clubs suffering from the empty promises of wealthy West Germans. However, despite this history, East German clubs have continued to be resilient, and now it's finally starting to pay off. Their success is coming in one of two ways. First off, there's the easier path, where a wealthy investor financially supports the team. Red Bull Leipzig has taken this approach, with foreign investors from the Austrian energy drink company buying a team in the lower tiers of the German soccer pyramid and helping the team with a meteoric rise through the German league pyramid. Fans in Germany are divided on the ethics of this approach, however. Many argue that it violates the 50+1 rule, which is a rule in German soccer that ensures that the fans own a majority of soccer clubs. Proponents point to the economic benefits of the project. There's much less controversy about the second approach that clubs can take, but it's also much more difficult. The approach is simply managing the club well and slowly progressing, often with the help of the fans. A good example of this is Union Berlin, a club that fairly recently earned promotion to the Bundesliga. With smart transfers and the help of their fans, who saved the club millions of euros by helping with stadium renovations, the club has found success. If more clubs can follow this model, or even take Leipzig's approach, it might just be what is needed to kick off the resurgence of soccer at the highest levels in East Germany. If you've enjoyed watching this video, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving feedback in the comments section. This has been Pegunis. Thanks for watching.